Hey, and welcome to the very first episode of Wildflowers and Moonlight. I'm Alex, and I am genuinely so happy you're here. I've imagined this podcast for a while now, and I've rewritten this introduction more times than I would like to admit because I kept feeling like I needed to find the perfect way to explain what Wildflowers and Moonlight is. And eventually, I realized that would probably be a pretty terrible way to start a podcast that's supposed to be about embracing curiosity, imperfection, and figuring ourselves out along the way. So instead, I'm just going to invite you in. Grab your coffee or tea or whatever emotional support beverage you've brought with you today and come sit with me for a while. Before we get into this podcast and what it's going to be, I think I should probably tell you a little bit about the person behind the microphone because I am a person with a lot of interests. And that's actually part of how Wildflowers and Moonlight came to exist. I've always been a curious person, not necessarily in the I need to become an expert in this immediately kind of way, but more in the wait, that's fascinating, tell me everything kind of way. I'm the person who can start researching one completely innocent question and somehow emerge 3 hours later knowing far too much about something I absolutely did not intend to research that day. I love tarot, I love astrology, numerology, nature, books, folklore, spirituality, self-discovery, weather, gaming, creative projects, and I am a bit of a Swiftie, so take that with a grain of salt as you will. I know everyone has an opinion on that, but that's not my whole personality. So there's also probably like 17 other things depending on what week you catch me. But for a long time, I thought those interests needed separate boxes. This belongs over here. That belongs over there. This is spiritual Alex. This is gamer Alex. This is weather nerd Alex. This is tarot and book hoarding Alex. And somewhere along the way, I started asking myself why. Why do we feel like we have to make ourselves so easily categorized? Because that's not really how people work. At least it's definitely not how I work. And that realization became part of the seed for Wildflowers and Moonlight. I wanted somewhere I could be curious without needing every curiosity to become an identity. And I wanted somewhere where you could do that too. That's really the heart of this podcast. This isn't a podcast about becoming the perfect tarot reader. It's not about memorizing your entire birth chart. It's not about finding the perfect spiritual practice. And I'm definitely not going to sit behind this microphone pretending I have the secret formula for living your best life. Because let's be honest, I don't. But what I do have is curiosity, experiences, stories, things I've learned, things I'm still learning, and a willingness to ask questions. Because I think sometimes we're so focused on finding the answer that we forget how valuable the question can be. What do I actually believe? Why do I believe it? Does this still fit me? What am I curious about? What makes me feel to follow here? So, weird gardens. They grow where they can, sometimes in places where nobody planted them. Sometimes somewhere completely inconvenient. They adapt, they spread, they show up in unexpected places, and I've always loved that about wildflowers. There's something beautifully imperfect about a patch of wildflowers. And then there's moonlight. Moonlight feels quieter, reflective, a little mysterious. It illuminates things differently. And I think we need both. There are seasons we're growing wildly and trying everything and chasing curiosity wherever it takes us. And then there's seasons where we're quieter, where we're reflecting, resting, questioning, maybe even changing our minds. Neither one is better. They're just different parts of being human. And that's Wildflowers and Moonlight. Growth and reflection. Curiosity and intuition. Chaos and quiet. And realistically, probably a little more chaos than quiet around here. Because I have 3 dogs, 2 kids, and a small flock of backyard chickens. So, what are we actually going to talk about? Well, a little bit of everything. There will definitely be some tarot, but I don't want to approach tarot as something you have to memorize perfectly or some mystical test you need to pass before you're allowed to call yourself a tarot reader. I want to talk about tarot as a tool for reflection, intuition, creativity, and understanding yourself. We'll spend some time talking about astrology, and not just the stuff you see online, like you're a Scorpio, therefore you should do this. I really would like to explore birth charts, planets, houses, aspects, astrocartography, and all of the fascinating layers underneath the horoscope version of astrology most of us encounter first. We'll probably wander into some numerology, spirituality, intuition, personal growth, books, nature, folklore, creativity, and sometimes we'll probably wander completely off the trail because I found something interesting and I need someone else to know about it. Actually, you should probably expect that one. There will also be conversations about the less aesthetic parts of all of this because spirituality online can become very polished. Beautiful tarot decks, perfect journals, candles everywhere, gorgeous altars, and listen, I love all of those things, and I own an unreasonable number of tarot decks. But your spiritual practice doesn't have to look beautiful on Instagram to mean something. You don't need the perfect journal. You don't have to pull a card every morning. You don't have to meditate for an hour. You don't have to know what every planet is doing at all times. You don't even have to believe the same thing 5 years from now that you believe today. You are allowed to evolve. And that's something I want to talk about a lot here. You don't have to pick just a box. And maybe this is something you need to hear too. You don't have to turn yourself into one easily explained thing. You can love tarot and science. You can be spiritual and skeptical. You can spend your morning journaling about your birth chart and evening yelling at a video game. You can love quiet walks through the woods or absolute multiplayer chaos. You can read folklore because you believe there's wisdom inside it. You can also listen to folklore because there's probably some wisdom inside it as well. Or simply because humans tell really fascinating stories. Curiosity doesn't require certainty. That's probably going to become one of the unofficial philosophies of this podcast. You are allowed to explore something before deciding what you think about it. Actually, you're allowed to explore something and never decide exactly what you think about it. Our puppy is being noisy this afternoon as I record this. I'm sure many of you can relate. If you have pets at home, they never know how to be quiet. But let's get back to it. There are things that I've studied for years where my answer is still, I don't know, but isn't that interesting? And I think we've lost some of that, the ability to wonder without immediately needing to declare a position. And I want Wildflowers and Moonlight to make room for wonder. So this field notes, it's very similar to my blog, which also is field notes. But it's a little something for you to take away from our conversation and explore on your own. Sometimes it'll be a journal prompt. Sometimes a tarot spread. Maybe an observation exercise, a question, something to research, or just something to carry with you for the week. So, for our very first field notes, I want you to think about this. What are you curious about right now? not what you think you should learn, not what would be productive, and not what fits whatever version of yourself you've been presenting to the world. What are you genuinely curious about? And then, when was the last time you let yourself follow a curiosity simply because it interested you? Write it down somewhere. Your journal, your notes app, the back of an envelope, whatever you've got. And maybe this week, follow one of those trails. You don't need to turn it into anything. You don't have to monetize it. You don't have to master it. You don't even have to tell anyone you're doing it. Just see where it goes. Oh, and one more thing before you go. There's one more thing I want to establish from the beginning. I want this to be a conversation. I'm obviously the one sitting behind a microphone right now, and I don't want Wildflowers and Moonlight to feel like me standing in front of a classroom telling you what to think. I want you to disagree with me sometimes. I want you to ask questions. I want to hear about the weird rabbit holes you've disappeared into, and I want to know what you're reading, what you're learning, what you're questioning, what you'd like us to explore here, because I have a feeling some of the best future episodes won't come from my carefully planned content calendar. They're going to come from someone saying, okay, but have you ever thought about? And me responding, no, but now I have to know. Which is probably how we'll end up with an entire episode about something none of us expected. And I'm completely okay with that. Until next time, that's Wildflowers and Moonlight. It's tarot and astrology and books and nature and spirituality and creativity and probably gaming references where gaming references absolutely do not belong. And maybe some Taylor Swift references too. But it's a place for learning, but also questioning, growing, changing your mind, following the rabbit holes, and occasionally sitting underneath the metaphorical moonlight wondering what any of this actually means. If that sounds like somewhere you'd like to spend some time, subscribe and come wander with me. You can also find the field guide where I'll be sharing companion posts, resources, reflections, and other things connected to what we're exploring here. And if you want to actually talk with me and the rest of our little community, you can join us over on Discord. But mostly, thank you for being here. Seriously. There's something a little strange about recording the first episode of a podcast because right now I'm talking into a microphone and trusting that eventually somebody is going to be on the other side of it. And if that's you, hi, I'm really glad you found your way here. We've got a lot of trails ahead of us, so stay curious, wander gently, and I'll meet you back here beneath the moonlight.